I'm Kara Infante, and this is Bookish Flights. In each episode, I chat with one bookish guest as we take some time to sample and savor the pairing recommendations from their bookish flight. We hope to give you suggestions to cultivate your TBR list and nurture your leisure time through books. In today's episode, I am chatting with Lauren Ford. Lauren has a background in film distribution, acquisitions, and script development with a focus on romantic comedies. Lauren lives in Australia with her husband, 2 children, and one overly excitable Sheepadoodle. When she isn't writing, she can be found reading anything involving romance, patting random unsuspecting animals, or continuing her quest for the perfect gluten-free bacon and egg roll. Welcome to the show, Lauren.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. Well, I feel like you're so much more than this bio. So can you tell us a little bit about who you are?
I'm very focused on the gluten-free bacon and egg roll. I am an Australian writer, Australian rom-com writer. My debut novel's coming out in July. I am married with 2 kids and a fluffy dog. And my background's mainly in the film industry. That's where I kind of started. It's where I studied film and television at university. And the last probably 3 years switched to publishing, and it's been amazing. And it's been a long wait, but yeah, waiting for the debut to come out in July. I worked in film acquisitions. I worked in film marketing. I worked in script development, script editing, script assessment. So it's all been about stories and learning about story structure and working with writers and giving feedback. And now I'm on the other side of it, receiving feedback. And I had written a short film as well that got made, and it was a comedy short. That was kind of probably the first thing I ever wrote that got made, and realized I wanted to be a writer.
That's so exciting. And thank you for clarifying a little bit because this is an industry I don't know much about. So I'm from the medical background. So I'm like,
Right,
this is
okay.
a whole other genre or industry that I do not know. Do you find, did it translate fairly well from the film side to you writing a novel, or was there a big shift in doing that?
I was a big reader, so I think, and people do say that it's all about reading, but no story structure really translates well.
Okay.
Um, it's about the same arcs and obviously long form, and it's obviously technical how you write it, but in terms of story structure, character arcs, it transfers really well. And all my study and research, I use it now when I'm writing my novels. So I feel for me it transferred very well. I don't know if anyone else have a different opinion, but um, it was more the daunting task of whether you could write a novel.
Yeah.
I knew I could tell the story in terms of structure, but whether I could technically write the novel, that's where I was more nervous about.
Yeah. I imagine you sit down with this blank page and you're like, am I really gonna do this all?
Yeah, am I really going to try and write a novel? But yeah, it got there eventually, day by day, ticking away the word counts and the word goals, and you eventually end up with a novel, and then you start editing it and
Yeah.
editing it and keep going.
So it's been about a 3-year journey then for this novel?
Um, it has been. I wrote it, but then also I started from scratch. So I had started drafting and then finished the draft, and then that was a querying process to get an agent,
Sure.
and then signing with my agent, and then going on submission. And so it is a long game with publishing. I really love the publishing industry because there's nothing really like this in the film industry in terms of ways of querying directly to agents.
Okay.
You don't really have that. The film industry, you're really cold calling or trying to get grants, especially in Australia
Wow.
where we're working in the independent space. We weren't studio system or anything like that. So I came over to publishing. I thought it's amazing. I know people have their problems with it and issues, but it's an amazing system that agents are out there reading from debut for people who haven't had anything published and telling you what they want and telling you how to submit to them. And I just thought this was a really wonderful system, something that I could like just completely chip away at, and found my agent, which I'm so grateful for.
Yeah.
And then on submission, and then signing Canelo was wonderful, and then we've been through edit. So it's just a long journey, but I've been learning so much through it, which I've loved learning this side of the industry.
Wow. Yeah. And I love hearing that other side of like having to cold call for the film side. That's crazy to think of the
Basically, it's
difference.
about contacts, and most production companies don't want to work with new writers, or also they're working on their own projects. So it's not the system is nothing like that in the film industry. Not film industry have wonderful things as well, but it's not for new writers. It's very hard.
Yeah.
Nothing like in publishing.
Yeah. I remember thinking, I'm actually a physical therapist by trade, and I remember graduating PT school and I thought, oh, I'm finally going to be a competent physical therapist, which is such a like naive view, right? Because then you graduate and then you go to work and like, well, you're just a new grad. And I'm like,
Yeah, start
when
again.
I'm like, I remember I talked, my husband is one too, and it was like, when are we going to be considered like we might know something? Like we might know what we're
Yes.
doing. And he's like, I don't know. But yeah, because then you get like this new grad status for a year at least after you graduate. And I think it's so true because I think until you're doing it and you're really in it, you definitely are learning along the way. But I just remember thinking that. And I imagine it's similar for new writers of like, well, when will I like, how do I get experience if no one will hire because I need a year of experience to get a job? And it's just a complicated process, right?
Yeah, and whether you have imposter syndrome and never want to call yourself a writer, or but it's about, just constantly keep writing, even if you get rejection, I suppose, just keep writing. That's
Yeah.
where you get your experience from.
Yeah, absolutely. And just what you already said is just keep chipping away at it, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, everything I learned in the book, the screenplays I'd worked on that didn't get up or the project didn't, that all helped. And I think is the reason why I've been able to get Live as Not a Loser published,
Yeah.
all contributed.
Yeah, I think that's great. Everything can be a lesson, right? It might seem like a disappointment at the time, but it can always be a lesson and something to learn from and change for the next time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, why don't you tell the listeners? So, listeners, her book is called Live is Not a Loser. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Live is Not a Loser. It's a friends to lovers romantic comedy, and it's about a woman who realizes that she's a loser and puts together a 10-step plan to change her life.
So, and is this just a realization one day she comes to, she's like, I need to do something to change?
Her sister announces her that she's pregnant, and her brother announces that he's getting engaged. And
Okay.
the only thing that she can tell her family is that she's adopted a pet lizard. So she realizes she may be a loser in the family. There's some changes may need to happen. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, so I came up with the idea. It was really at the time I had the idea of I want to do friends to lovers because it's my favorite trope. So I knew I wanted to write something. I knew it had to be friends to lovers. And then I had watched a lot of movies and I've been reading a lot of books about it's a very typical setup where the man doesn't want to commit, where a man doesn't want to be tied down. Very Peter Pan, Wendy stereotype. And I
Okay.
just felt like I'd seen it a lot and I had looked in men in my own life and I didn't see that. I didn't see that kind of lack of commitment from men. And so I thought when I was drafting, would it be nice to flip it and have a role reversal where Liv in my story is Peter Pan and she
Okay.
needs to grow up and make some changes. And Henry is Wendy and he's more secure. And Liv is not Peter Pan in that she doesn't want to get tied down. It's actually she has a deep fear of abandonment and that's where it comes from. And obviously, because it's a rom-com, it's through comedy that comes out, but it
Yeah.
is dealing with some hopefully issues that women will um, connect with as well.
Yeah. So it sounds like she has a bit of a transformation within the story as well, I'm guessing.
Definitely, she's got her plan, her 10-step, not live as not a loser list that she works through the book to really mature and actually work through some issues that she's got. Kind of describe it as Liv grabbing an old handbag and turning it upside down and finding all the weird and wonderful things that when you transfer handbags and you don't know what was in
Yeah.
the bottom. Yeah, Liv is like doing that with her life and her issues and just trying to work through all this stuff she's been carrying around and weighing her down.
Oh, I love that. I really love a good transformation story when they come into themselves a little bit as well. So, can you tell us? So, the book obviously it comes out differently in Australia than it does here in the States. Can you tell us what the release dates are for that?
So worldwide, it's July 11th
Oh,
for
okay.
yeah. So it
I
should be all to everything.
Perfect. Okay.
Audiobook will be a bit later. I think at the moment it's October.
Okay. All right. So, how
Oh,
does that?
German language and Romanian language as well at this stage.
Okay.
So Yeah.
Okay. I don't know why I was thinking that it was two different dates, but good to know. How
It is
does,
often Australia. I don't, me personally, but we don't get the paperback until a bit later. But no, Midwest,
okay.
yeah,
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
yeah.
How does the audiobook process work? Are you involved with the production of that as well?
They sent me some samples and
Okay.
then got some narrators, and I was able to work with my agent, and we chose someone. So it's
Fun.
exciting.
Yeah, what a fun process.
It was very daunting to hear someone read your own book for the first time and hear your words. It was, yeah, yes. So I haven't heard the final version yet, but I've heard samples. So
Okay. Yeah, I always think of you as an author releasing your novel, it's like putting a baby out into the world and you're letting everybody read the kind of the internal workings of your mind a little bit. There's definitely a big, like, courageous thing to doing that.
yes, I mean, I'm lucky that the people close to me, a lot of them have already read it, and everyone's been so supportive. But I know come July 11th, I'll be feeling a little bit vulnerable and a little bit
Yeah.
okay, everyone. And I mean, I have to say the Bookstagram community have been so wonderful that have actually made me feel really. I thought I'd be feeling more freaked out about it, but everyone's been so lovely, and I actually get a lot of DMs from people who've got the arc, and that community is actually, I think, people talk about how good they are, but I'm actually experiencing how wonderful they are. And I
Yeah.
think that will actually, I'll probably lean on them more when I'm feeling a bit vulnerable and say, hey, tell me something nice about my book.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I had an author I interviewed last week, and that was what she said. She was like, if you ever read my book, you can always message me. Like I read them all, and that's just like it helps just a little bit to get that boost if someone's read it and they've really enjoyed it or it touched them in a way. So listeners, if you want to do something good, you can always message or email your favorite authors and tell them how much the book meant. I think it means a
I'm
lot to
sure
you.
they love it. And the thing is, I'm a huge romance reader, so I love talking to anyone about romance books. So you don't even talk to me about my book; you talk to me about any books. I don't mind. So we
Yeah,
normally get off topic and start talking about other books. So it's fine, but it's lovely to connect with people who love the same things that you do.
absolutely. Well, what do you hope that readers might ponder as they're reading Live as Not a Loser?
I think that hopefully they think about maybe what list they have, a list of things that they've maybe set on the side that they're carrying around. If there are a thing that maybe in the back of their mind that happened or that they haven't done and that's making them think they're a loser. I think it was
Okay.
probably the thing I was working through is that do we all feel at some point that we are losers or we haven't done enough or we haven't achieved enough, we haven't hit a milestone by a certain time, we compare ourselves to other people when we really shouldn't, and it was just kind of freeing ourselves of not having that feeling of being a loser,
Yeah.
just being ourselves. So I hope people laugh. I hope people laugh. That would be wonderful if people laugh and love the romance, but also, know that they're not a loser as well.
Yeah. I think that's amazing. The book I just finished last night had a very similar theme about putting things down because we're not meant to carry them around. And it's told from like a flashback, and he's an older man, and it's like by the end of the novel, he's finally realized that he didn't need to carry around all these burdens and these little moments that he was, and he finally was able to let them go and like had this realization. And I think that's
Yeah.
the sooner we can recognize that, the better.
I mean, I think we're hard on ourselves. I think we're harder on ourselves than we are other people sometimes. And
Oh, yeah.
so,
We're our
so
own worst critic, right?
yeah. And I mean, I wrote Lou's character to be very kind because I wanted to show that really any unkindness she has, she saves for herself.
Yeah.
So she's the most unkind and says thinks the harshest things about herself. And she's actually kind to other people. And so it was about her trying to learn some kindness for herself.
Yeah. And I think that's so true, right? I mean, I fall victim to it as like that negative feedback loop I have going on in my brain. It's not coming out, but it's on in
It's
there. And it's like you almost have to stop yourself. Be like, no, like that's not true. Or you don't have to think like that. Or, you cut the cycle.
Yeah, and beating yourself up for being human and
Yeah.
having bad days and all those things that we think we should be this way, or we are just as we are and accept ourselves.
Yeah, and we can extend that grace to others, right? Of recognizing, oh, they're having a hard day, but recognizing it within yourself could be a good skill to learn as well.
Yeah.
So, well, you've had a career in writing, it sounds like, but did you learn anything about yourself while writing this novel?
That I could write a book was probably the biggest. There's a lot of self-doubt. I had experience in writing, but most of it had been on the other side of it. So
Yeah.
giving notes to writers and working with screenplays and assessing screenplays. So this was my biggest task as a writer. I had written screenplays, but they haven't been produced. Some of them, the short film got made, but so it was more that I could do it, and I suppose that I loved doing it. You think you're going to love it, but do you actually love it when it's the hard days and you've got to sit in the chair and you don't even know if it's ever going to get finished? But I actually really loved it. If I could spend every day with the characters, it's actually a
Yeah.
good day for me. So it's, I knew that I wanted it to be a career as well, not just to finish this book.
I love that. So do you have ideas for any future projects?
Since finishing Leave, I've written two more books. So
Okay.
yeah, so I've written another adult rom-com, that's with Canelo as well. So that'll be out next year. I'm hoping that I can release,
Yay.
yeah, I'm hoping if I can release some title and synopsis soon, that would be lovely.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I've written a YA romantic comedy as well.
Okay.
So they're in various forms of
Awesome.
editing, and then once Liv's done and that dust is settled, I'm going to start a new project
Okay.
um, for the last second half of the year.
Well, congratulations to you. I didn't want to jump the gun being like, well, do you have, but I know that's kind of the cycle, right? Is the one's going to be released and you're already kind of working on maybe one or two projects ahead. So amazing.
And it was the best. Everyone says the advice while you're waiting for an agent or you're waiting on submission is to write the next one, and it's great advice. It's really hard advice because your mind is not ready to move on from the one you don't know whether it's going to get published. But I took that advice, and I'm glad I did now because those books are done.
Yeah.
So
Amazing. Wow. Well, was there a book that you read that you thought maybe you'd want to be a writer?
I bet it doesn't make me want to be a writer. Well, all romance books probably make me want to write
Okay.
romance. I'm not sure if there's The Hating Game by Sally Thorne was kind of like a book that I think was a game changer for me. I mean, it's a wildly popular novel,
Yeah.
hugely popular. I don't know if everyone knows that she's an Australian author as well.
Okay.
Um, but it was a huge book, and I actually tried to option it when I was working with a production company because I thought it would turn into this beautiful movie, and it has. I didn't get the rights; it was snapped up very quickly by an American production company.
Okay.
Um, but I that book also for me was, I think, a moment where I started thinking that the rom-com genre is so well handled in publishing that maybe the ideas that I'm having could work as novels and not screenplays, and
Yeah.
that I could potentially write a novel.
Yeah. It is hugely popular. And I
Yes.
feel like it's such a great, I'm really glad we're doing this interview and it's going to come out here this summer because I feel like it's such a great summer read too. Like that's usually where I'll go to like the rom-com genres. I'll switch over in the summer. I feel like they're great beach reads and taking to the pool and just, I mean, I guess Australia, your seasons are different, but in my mind, in the US,
I'll pretend I'm in summer. It's fine. I hate winter, so I'll pretend I'm in summer for my summer release.
yeah, I agree with you. I don't love winter either. So we're forever running from it. So, well, you've already kind of alluded to what you love to read, and it sounds like you've always been a reader, but what genres do you normally enjoy?
Romance. I do step out of it a little bit, but mainly romance. But I read rom-com, I will read romantasy, I read non-fiction as well.
Okay.
I do. I don't have to read them in paperback. I can't. I always need to like kind of mark those and dog ear them, unfortunately. Um, and my family try and get me to read crime quite a bit, but I can tell you that I read before I go to sleep at night, and so I really need something lighter. I think I heard you say that on a previous episode that you're the same. You need something lighter at night. I do. I
Yeah,
can't read anything with murder before I go to sleep because I'm dreaming about it all night. So
same. Yeah, it's like the thriller genre. I want to love it and I want to try it because it's another hugely popular genre, but I'm like, I read before I go to bed and I don't want to be in suspense or in like who killed who. I'm like, I just can't be in that thought pattern before I go to
no,
bed.
there's so many romance novels and subgenres that I want to read. I really don't think I'm going to have the time to step out of the genre because my my TBR, my to be read list is so long that I don't know if I'll ever get through it. So
Yes.
I
Same.
love I love what I read, so I'm just happy to stay in that genre.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to retire from life, I think, to get through my TBR.
I know.
Take a year sabbatical, possibly.
Yeah.
So, well, and then in your busyness of writing and editing, and I'm imagining what your days look like, how do you find time to read?
I read at night. I read a
Okay.
couple of hours, I think, before I go to sleep. When everyone else is asleep in the house, I like to read then. It's quiet and I have my sad little night light and I read then and stay up way too late.
Yeah. Do
Yeah.
you ever get burnt out at like writing during the day and then you're like, I don't know that I want to go read words tonight. Does that ever happen?
I have, when I was in the middle of drafting the last adult rom-com and I was on deadline to get my done, I really couldn't get into another story because my head was so far into, that didn't sound right, but my head was so far deep into the story
Yeah.
that I really couldn't start taking on new characters in my brain, which
Yeah.
is not a good place. I don't enjoy that. I like being able to read and write at the same time, but just I needed a break. And that wasn't that long, but mainly I can swap. And if I'm writing, while I was writing an enemies to lovers story this time, I just stayed clear of that I didn't want to read
Okay.
anything in that space. So I was reading romantasy or
Yeah.
I'll switch to YA so that I'm reading something completely different from what I'm trying to draft. So it
Yeah.
doesn't get muddled and I don't, characters are separate.
Yeah, and it gives you maybe a fresh like perspective when you go to switch to the book that night. You're like, okay, something different for the brain.
Yeah, something different. Yeah, romantasy is great for that because I don't write that. I haven't written that. So that's really great.
Yeah, that's a genre that is newer to me. I just started, that was actually part of the reason why I started this show, is because I wanted to read fantasy. And I was already thinking of like what could I do with my time? And I was thinking of podcasts and I was thinking books and I was like, what if I interview someone and like I know friends that are readers, right? And they love these certain genres and started with like what if someone brings on a book flight of fantasy? Like, hey, I know I want to try fantasy. I always say I don't love it, but I've really never read it.
Yeah.
Tell me three books I should read to try the fantasy genre. And so that was how Bookish Flights came about, was like, well, I'm going to go to the people that I know read these genres, and then we can all explore other genres from someone that's their go-to. And for you, right, we're going to have a rom-com book flight today, and it's perfect. So someone that wants to try this, they can read your book flight and they can really explore to see if this is a genre for them.
I love that. I mean, I always keep my ears out for different genres because I love buying books as gifts. So I always like
Yeah.
I know who in my family love crime or who likes thriller, who's YA. So I always love those book recs. Like even if I don't end up buying it for myself, I buy it for someone else.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
the more you have, back to your conversation with the Bookstagram community, and the more you have conversations with people about what they love, right? You're like, okay, I know they love this, so I can send them that as a gift, and they make great
And I
gifts.
know you start hearing about the same book 3 or 4 times, or it keeps popping up, and you go, okay, now I know this is the one that people are talking about. This is something I need to pay attention to.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'll recognize the cover, you recognize the name, and you're like, okay, yep, got to take note of that one. Well, you have brought a book flight for us today. I kind of alluded a little bit about what it is. Can you tell us how the books pair together?
Yes, no surprises that I'll be bringing you on a romance flight. But I'm going to do friends to lovers trope as well.
Okay.
That's in Livers No Loser, it's friends to lovers, but it's also one of my favorite tropes. I think it's
Okay.
a popular one. People love enemies to lovers, friends to lovers, but my favorite's friends to lovers. So the first book, I'm going to go with the Queens of Romance, Christina Lauren, and so the book is Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating. I
Okay.
think this book is on, I think, most lists for friends to lovers. It's one of the best in the for the trope. It's hilarious, and I love books that can make you actually laugh out loud.
Yep.
So, and it's got a great female character. She's a bit chaotic and a bit of a mess, but she's super endearing, which I love as well.
Who's not
And
chaotic and a bit of a mess?
oh, that's right. Appreciate that. But the characters also have known each other since college, and they meet up afterwards and become friends. They're complete opposites, so they don't consider that they would ever suit each other, and they start setting each other up on horrible dates.
Okay.
It's a great friends to lovers, so I recommend. Josh and
Yeah.
Hazel's Grapes Not Dating.
I always love the books that can make you laugh out loud. And then my husband will look at me and be like, I'm either crying or laughing. And then I'll get like the side eye, be like, are you okay over there? And I'm like, oh, this
Yeah.
was just so funny.
I just love when also you just got a constant little smile on your face the whole
Yeah.
time you're reading. My husband goes, "Do you know you're smiling right now?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I'm enjoying the walk."
Exactly. The joy of books.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, what's the second book you brought today?
Second book is switching to a YA rom-com. I'm going to do Better Than the Movies by Len Painter.
Okay.
So I recommend this book to anyone who'll listen, and I probably shouted about it too much on Twitter that Lynn needs to block me. Because I'm starting a campaign to make sure that gets optioned to turn into a movie because it's the perfect book that should
Okay.
be on Netflix or wherever in the cinemas I go and see it. But it's very cute and it's very funny. And there are a couple who live next door to each other, and they were friends who became enemies, who became friends again, and then lovers. And it's so adorable and it's so funny. And the sequel's coming out later in the year.
Okay. Oh, really
So
good to know. So if you haven't read it
yeah,
yet, we need to get reading.
yes. I think I'm not going to get this right, but it's been on the bestseller list for USA for something like nearly a year.
Yeah.
It's so popular, this book, and it's so lovely. And TikTok also love this book, but it was popular before TikTok as well. But it's one of my favorites.
Okay. I might have to get this. We're going home in about 3 weeks. And so I'm like already planning what book I'm going to get for the trip. And maybe this will have to be the one because we'll go swimming quite a bit at my sister-in-law's house and I'll have a great summer read.
Oh, that's perfect. It's got so many references to rom-com movies. So if you're a rom-com lover, yeah, it's got
Okay.
all the references and you'll pick them up. It's lovely.
So fun. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. So that was Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. And then what's
Yeah.
the last book you brought today?
The Deal by Elle Kennedy. And I chose this one. I had a few to choose from, but I chose The Deal because it really is going to show up on any friends to lovers list as a top read.
Okay.
And I love Elle Kennedy. I love her books. But this is hockey romance, and hockey romance is so popular these days.
Yeah. Okay.
And TikTok has gone crazy with hockey romance, but I think it deserves a mention because I'm not sure if it started the trend, but it certainly has a huge impact on the trend. It was out way before it was a thing, hockey romance. So I think if you are into hockey romance, you really need to go back to the start and read The Deal if you have missed that's where it started.
Yeah.
And the main character is hilarious, and I know he's a book boyfriend for a lot of readers. So definitely worth the deal. I think if you're a romance reader, you may have already read The Deal, but if I catch anyone who has missed it, then my job is done. So,
Yeah. It's me. I have not read this one. And I admittedly, when people ask that question, I'm like, nope, I haven't read a hockey romance, haven't read it. So I need to start here.
we need to start, yeah, start at the start.
Okay. All right. So really good to know. So that was The Deal by Al Kennedy. Well, thank you so much for bringing these books today. I love to end the show with what I call our bonus pairings, which are just a speed round of questions here. So, first one, are you a rereader?
Absolutely. I love rereading. I love rereading after enough time that I don't remember everything that happened, but I remember the feeling the book gave me and kind of try and re-experience the first time I read it. But definitely, I have some books I've reread 5 times or more. It's, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm not much of a rereader, but I think if I gave it enough space and time, right, to then go back and to your point, that I should try it. There's so many books on my TBR that I'm always like, nope, I don't have time to reread, but I should.
Yeah, and then you need a comfort read when you know that you're going to enjoy it. Just that
Yeah.
security that I'm going to love this book.
Someone mentioned that that was their cure for their book hangover recently. It was that they would go back to a book they know that they love. And then it
Yes,
would kind of help pull them out of that book hangover feeling of like, ah, I don't can't get into anything because that last book really gripped me. And
I
they
think
would,
that's great advice. I do that as well. If you're kind of like a couple that you haven't really felt, you just really need to read, go back to a 5 star.
okay, all right, I'm gonna try it. I'll let you know how it goes.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, and then what is one book that has changed your life?
Um, I think I answered this already with Hiding Game.
Okay, and then where is your favorite place to read?
Um, I have a spot on my desk that the sun, and I can have a comfy chair and I have a cup of tea. And in winter, it has the winter sun. and it's lovely. And I've got to look at the trees and the birds, or in bed when everyone is asleep is
Yeah.
my also other favorite place to read.
Okay.
But yeah, I also read paperbacks pretty. I try and read paperbacks now so that my daughters can see that I'm actually reading a book and not actually sitting on my phone. I'm probably reading, if I'm looking at my phone, most times I'm reading, but I like to have paperback so the kids actually see that I'm
I
reading in
totally agree. Modeling
well.
the behavior, right, of having a book, I think is so important.
Yes.
So, and then lastly, what are you reading next?
I'm reading The Last Love Note by Emma Gray, and she's an Australian author. It's a rom-com, but it's also, I've been told, it's a bit of a tearjerker, so I'm
Yeah.
very intrigued. It came highly recommended to me by a friend from the book community, Mickey. She's my go-to for all my book recs, and she messaged me and said, "You need to get this one." So when she does that, I buy it automatically. And I
Yeah.
have recommended it to friends and my auntie already, and she messaged me and said she was amazing. So I'm really looking forward to starting that soon.
Yes, I just put that on hold on my
Did you?
library
Oh,
app.
great.
Yeah, so I keep seeing it as well. And like you said, if I see a book a couple of times, I usually kind of take that as my message of like, okay, you need to add this to your list. So I recently added it to my
Oh,
library
well.
app to see if I could get the audio copy. So
Oh, well, we can check in when after we've read it.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight for you. I know your time is precious and I appreciate all you've given me.
Oh, thank you. It's been wonderful chatting with you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode today with Lauren Ford with her Friends to Lovers rom-com book flight. We'd love to hear what other books you'd pair with this book flight at bookishflights.com. Bookish Flights has been nominated for the People's Choice Podcast Awards in the category of Best Female Hosted Podcast. We'd love to have you vote for us if you head on over to podcastawards.com and vote for Bookish Flights in the category of Best Female Hosted Podcast. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. As Emma Thompson said, I think books are like people in the sense that they'll turn up in your life when you most need them. Cheers to you, dear readers. Until next time.